Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Vastvosau here with another upload from my YouTube channel. Final Fantasy XIV has done an amazing job creating a variety of in-game content that is fun with classes that feel fluid and balanced. However, after a while, it seems like the in-game kind of gets a little stale. In the background, you're watching me tank what most people would call the entirety of the in-game content, starting from the extreme primals all the way up to turn 5. Currently, this is the content that drops the highest level gear and what is farmed most often. And if you only have one level 50, then you're stuck doing all of this content, be it fun, in the same role. You're stuck doing one thing over and over and over. And the only way to be able to experience the game from another role is to level up another class to 50. And in Final Fantasy XIV, that's not a very pleasant process. It's pretty much a grind. And what's more after that, what happens when you get that class to level 50 and you experience all the in-game content and then you want to try another role? Then you got to start the process over again. And that is a huge time investment that does not really work well. I mean, it gives it what you call replay value, but it's not enjoyable. I feel like this system is flawed. And so what I want to do with this video is to propose an idea that would make Final Fantasy a much more enjoyable game, as well as removing some of the grind that comes with learning a new role. And this isn't a revolutionary idea that I'm talking about. It's been done in other MMOs like World of Warcraft and Rift, and it's coming out in newer titles like Wildstar and Elder Scrolls Online. And what I'm talking about is the ability to play several different roles with the same class. So for example, if you have a class that is a tank, you could switch your abilities and a few pieces of gear, and then all of a sudden you're a DPS class. Or if you're a healer, you could switch again your gear and a few abilities, and then you're a tank. And what this does is it allows an incredible amount of depth for each class in the game, basically allowing you to learn fights several different ways, but still staying as the same class. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how other MMOs are using this same idea with their own kind of twist to it. World of Warcraft had this style of play as far back as the vanilla version of the game. And this is back early in the development of MMOs, when the creators were trying to figure out how to make a game that still keeps the players' attentions once they reach the maximum level. Roles were relatively set, but there was the beginning of flexibility in classes and roles as the first part of in-game content came out. For example, in the first couple of raids that came out, the warrior class was generally expected to be a tank, like the one that you see in this video. However, there were many warriors who went into groups as DPS, and one of the most famous videos from the vanilla WoW era was of a warrior in the final boss fight of the second raid. The boss's name was Nefarian, and he was topping the DPS charts, meaning he was doing more damage than anyone else in the group. And this is a warrior whose originally the class was meant to be a tank, doing more damage than any other class that was even created to do damage. Another big MMO with this kind of customization that's about to be launched is Wildstar. Wildstar has this thing where you have several different loadouts that you can have on your bar, where one loadout may be good for damage, another for tanking. And they also have amps. Amps are basically these abilities where it's like a talent tree. You put points in one way and you're better at tanking, or you put points the other way and you're better at DPS. And they even have a third way, which is kind of like a hybrid, adding even more variety for each class. And the last MMO I'm going to talk about that uses customization is more or less using it as their selling point. Elder Scrolls Online. They talk about how you can be anything, and all you really need to do is change your gear or change your weapon, and then you're a new class. So let's compare this back to Final Fantasy. If you're playing a paladin, you're pretty much stuck being a tank. If you're playing a white mage, you're going to be a healer. I mean, there's not very much flexibility in there. And some people say that, well, the weapon swapping system is all that you need to kind of change this up. And yeah, kind of, sort of, but at the same time, you have to grind a lot to get there. And then once you get to level 50, there's only one right way to play that class. So imagine if we implemented this idea. Just hold on to the idea of weapon swapping, and imagine if we put this idea into Final Fantasy of one class being able to play several different roles. And we'll even go as simple as the idea of one class being able to play the same role two different ways. And we'll use the monk. Imagine if a monk could do DPS two different ways. You know, one guy going into a group as a monk could do the same fight two different ways, practicing two different rotations, or maybe one fight will call for one rotation that's higher DPS, and another fight will call for the other rotation. and not just using the same spells, but a whole new variety of spells. They're able to amplify one spell through a talent tree or through something like that, and it just creates this whole level of depth that's not there right now. Pretty much out there somewhere, one guy has figured out how to play Monk in the way Final Fantasy is now. There's one guy that figured out the optimal rotation, the best in slot gear, and if you don't have that, or if you don't have the rotation down or the gear, then you're not playing Monk right. You know, this it's not, well, I'm playing it my way. It's you're not playing it right. But imagine if there was more variety to it. One, it would allow for a lot more uniqueness. You'd be able to try different rotations, try different specs, and just make Monk your own. And it's really kind of hard for somebody to debate with you because they could say, well, yours brings this to the table and mine does this. You know, it just makes classes have a lot more variety to them. And I feel like the developers may already have this idea in mind. And one of the things that made me think that is whenever you look at the best weapon, the highest level weapon for the warrior, which is originally a tank class, it has no parry on it. And parry is basically the one stat that distinguishes a tanking item from a DPS item. And there's no parry on the axe. And then another item is also the heavy Allegan gauntlets. This is another item that is specifically meant for the tanking classes, but it has no parry. So there's several other items like this that make you think, well, are they already contemplating this? And if they are, how long will it take for them to implement it, and will it be polished? And the last thing I want to do with this video is kind of go over some ideas that I've had for classes. Nothing necessarily that had a lot of thought put into them, just some fun ideas. One would be to make the warrior or the paladin a DPS class. The warrior could have dual wielding axes, or the paladin could have like a big two-handed sword, or if you made like a dragoon, a tank with a one-handed spear and a shield. Just things like that would kind of change up group composition. You wouldn't have to be stuck with one warrior and one paladin as a tank, or you know, you could put a dragoon in there and take one of the others out. It just kind of adds variety to it all. But I'd like to hear what are some of your ideas for classes, things that would kind of make the game a little bit more interesting and kind of give each class this little kind of cool element. Post in the comments, let me know what you guys think. But that's pretty much it for my video. That's my idea of how to make Final Fantasy a little bit better of a game. Thank you for watching. God bless and have a great day.